Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the second day of racing at the National Cyclocross Championships, racing all across Europe, and with me here to discuss that is Issam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We are one day later than usual, a little bit more time to catch up on the racing in the countries, also a bit more time for Issam to finish some important last minute appointments on Sunday night on the National Championship weekend, but everything is fine. Please don't be worried if we occasionally come one day late. It is fine. The episodes will come, trust, but one day later, and we will be starting with the Belgian Championships for men, probably the biggest race of the day considering the magnitude of the event. For weeks, for days, for hours and hours, the only thing people talked about in Belgium was the race. What would happen? Would Thibaut Nys be able to do it? Could Emil Verstringen mount a challenge? And we quite quickly seem to have an answer to that already. Thibaut Nys, as said earlier this season, he hardly ever misses a race start when he needs to, and today he had a great start, or yesterday I must say. But he had a good start, he was at the front, and the course in Beringen, it was thawing, it was slow, it was muddy, it was a bit slippery, there was a risk of puncture, and above all there were these two massive climbs in there. It was a battle of attrition, and Thibaut Nys, he seemed to want to avoid any sort of mistakes by others. He wanted to be in control. He took the lead early on but didn't pace too hard, slowly but surely thinned out that leading group. Michael van Torenhout, the one able to hang with him for the longest, until the light went out. Where was Emil Verstringen? He was up there in the beginning, then he crashed, was 15 seconds down, and the gap stayed 15 seconds forever. Verstringen caught Van Torenhout, and that was the halfway point of the race. 15 seconds, 16 seconds, 17 seconds. It remained around that mark, and we were watching a bit of a chase. It was a matter of who would make a mistake. Would it be Verstringen, or Van Torenhout for that matter, but mainly Verstringen, he was the one driving that chase, then it would certainly be over. Would it be Nys? Then Verstringen would be given a lifeline. It was the latter. Thibaut Nys made a mistake, crashed with 2.5 laps to go, needed to change his bike. Then Verstringen came close, the gap was 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, but Nys in the penultimate lap seemed to have something left. He put in a big acceleration up the Terrils. The gap went back out. 15 seconds again. It seemed in the bag. But then, in the final lap, Emil Verstringen put in a charge. Nys, deflated, barely able to walk up the run-up, struggling, panicking maybe ever so slightly. Verstringen came closer and closer, and after the second climb of the Terrils, the gap was still just 4 seconds. Went past the VIP tent, and Verstringen accelerated out of every single corner like there was no tomorrow. Got to that wheel of Nys. Made a audacious all or nothing attempt. In one of the corners just before the finish, he dismounted, ran the inside line, attempted to overtake Nys, but Nys cut him off calmly. Verstringen needed to remount, and it was over. Nys with the title, Verstringen second. Third place for Van Torenhout. But my main takeaway kind of after that race is a few things. Just the mental part of this race to me was so intriguing. Nys going for that strategy of taking it calm early on. Relatively calm, that is. Like just slowly but surely staying within himself, not blowing up, not taking that risk, but also on this course not wanting to be caught up behind anyone else making the mistakes. Verstringen, what a resilience to hang in there like that, chasing all race on the back foot. How many times must he have thought, oh, it's over? How many times would he have lost belief? But he didn't. He kept going, he kept pushing. Phenomenal. Final lap, really good. For a while I thought in this mental part as well, oh, it's Nys getting complacent, but I don't think he did get complacent. I don't think he thought he had already won. He was just completely dead because he'd been going at it quite hard for an hour. It's just a very rough course in those conditions. Those sections down there around the start finish, the VIP, they were not easy. There were flat corners that were turning into a run because the course was thawing. It was just such a hard race that, of course, the technical aspect played a part, right? Like Nys in that big off camber with a phenomenal side shot. He was really good there. Probably gained a few seconds on Verstringen there. The power played a role. But for me, just watching this, I just thoroughly enjoyed and had admiration for the mental aspect of the race, the readiness Nijs showed early on, and the resilience and belief that Verstringen showed all race.
The fighting spirit, I guess, of Verstringen was it was tested and it was there. He was giving it his all, and to be honest, there were moments where I was like, well, he's not gonna get there, and then he finds something, and Nijs was pushed yesterday by Nijs. He was pushed to an absolute limit, and in the post race interview, Nijs kind of stated that he didn't really think that would happen. I don't know if he didn't know it would happen, that Verstringen was still going to be able to put him under such pressure, or that he just didn't have the legs in that last lap. The legs, he had still enough, but it was barely. It was really, he made it an interesting race, because if you look at how that race was developing, in a sense, especially from the first 2-3 laps, I was like, this is over. He's not going to give this away. He looked technically all right. It was weird because he was talking about not taking that many risks, but it felt like he was at some sections just maybe, I don't know, he forgot that whole mantra of not taking that many risks. It felt like he was taking some risks, and you have to. It is a course where you kind of have to take the risks in certain sections and certain corners. It was tricky. It was a difficult race to manage, and he went out quite early, and that means that you just, you have to really try and manage it, and it is so hard. It's so difficult. On a roll, up until that crash, I thought this is not going to go wrong, and then he had the crash, had to change bikes, and Verstringen from that moment on started to believe in it, and I started to believe in it in a sense, because I thought, if Verstringen is actually going to be able to be on the wheel of Nijs, it's gonna be very hard for Nijs to regain composure and confidence, because for Nijs, all the doom scenarios are up there. It's like, am I going to lose the title just because of a silly mistake? I had the legs, but now I'm going to throw it all away. For Verstringen, it was quite simple, the task that he had. He obviously had that crash early on in the race, and for him it was chasing and see where it all ends up. And I think that he definitely at a certain point did not think that it was going to be for victory, that it was most likely going to be for second, because Van Torenhout, how it had been going so far this season, you would think that he would struggle a little bit at the later phases of the race, and Verstringen would have the better of him there. So second place almost looked like that was going to be it. And then the crash happened, and Verstringen, he heard it, and he gave it his all. And he can look back on a strong race. There are going to be some what ifs. The what if Nijs didn't crash, and the what if Verstringen didn't crash. And mainly the Verstringen crash is definitely one that you look at and be like, that could have maybe changed how the race would have gone, because there are two ways to look at it. One is maybe Verstringen would have been too eager, followed Nijs, and then blew up himself as well, because if Nijs already, kind of, some would say that crash was his savior, in a sense, that he was then able to just pace himself and never really be paced by someone else, and that is gonna push you over the limit. And on the other hand, you're gonna obviously say, and that's probably the one that I maybe would tend to go with, is it cost him too much energy. He lost too much ground. He had to catch that up. If he didn't have that crash, he wouldn't come maybe he wouldn't come short, and he was going to be able. But that's the what ifs, and the what ifs that's part of the sport. That's definitely part of the course that we got and how the course was. Super difficult with the mud and the snow and everything. It was tricky, and then you just have to try and keep the composure and give it your all, and I think they both did, and Nijs was the better man.
There's always what ifs to races and championships, but to me the crash of Verstringen seemed more necessary than the one of Nijs. Nijs, also he was in the lead, not really much pressure, so in that sense both could have been avoided, but Nijs, it was later on the course a little bit tricky, downhill, something happened, lost his pedals on a bump, couldn't get clipped in and crashed. It can happen. Verstringen was on the flat early on in the race, in the group. It can also always happen. I mean, it's a difficulty of the race, but in either way, these crashes were both due to their own mistakes, and that's part of cyclocross, that's part of the sport, that's the technical part. You really need good physique, good technical, and good mental to perform here in cyclocross, and all these aspects came to the front. The technical part, there was not that much of it. I mean, the tactical part was also there, and that in cyclocross is staying on your bike, for instance, and getting off also your pacing plan. I think I agree with you. Van Toerenhout, he maybe blew up a little bit trying to follow Nice, but Van Toerenhout races for the title. He doesn't really care about second, third, or fourth. For Stringe, I don't think he would have blown up. He seemed physically very much up to the task to take on Nice. Could have been a very interesting and long battle. Now, it seemed over twice, but you were handed a great and a thrilling last lap battle, kind of because Nice, he probably just was out of energy. That's the way it still seems to me. So, you got that. Race could have been different, but this is the sport. You need to be able to execute, and both made their mistakes, and perhaps for Verstringen a bit more costly due to the timing of it. When he went down, Nice went with Van Toerenhout. Later, when Van Toerenhout got dropped, it wasn't really even an attack. Van Toerenhout, good day, but simply not up. In that sense, the order of the Christmas period, which we discussed at length in those podcasts, the 9 podcasts, was very much respected. Nijs and Verstringen were the 2 best Belgians consistently. Van Toerenhout, always dangerous at championships and certainly on this course. And then behind, Viseur and Van de Putte both have shown good things, but they didn't have a good course for them here. Too much climbing here. It's not what they excel at. In that sense, the order was respected. It was predictable. Nijs, the top favorite, wins, but that didn't mean that the race wasn't good. If I zoom in, because I've already gone over the mental part, the technical part on this course, the big downhill where you had the side panning, the off-camber, probably the hardest off-camber of the year, at least on this series. The one in Namur, now you drop in at lower speed, has become slightly easier, lots of ruts there, still difficult, don't get me wrong, but this one, with that big drop in the beginning, giving you the speed, and then this low path kind of going up and down, it would look like proper black ski slope. It was all black there, and so slippery, but you could see, you mentioned Nice starting with not too much risk, and it still looked like, but that's the riding style of Nice. When you see Nice and also somebody like Van der Poel, you see, oh, this is really, really fast, and you kind of hold your heart a little bit. Difference is Nice still has a bit of a tendency sometimes to then make a mistake and go down. Didn't really happen on the off-camber, but probably one could argue that the risks he took there in the last lap gave him the win, because if he doesn't take those 3 extra seconds there, Verstringen gets on the wheel, has plenty of opportunities on the flat to still make an overtake. Didn't happen. Again, the timing is so important, and Nice got that one right today. In the end, Issam, what do you think? Could Verstringen have done anything differently to win this race from the position he was in? We can debate the what-ifs, but let's debate what we actually had. That thrilling final section in front of the VIP tent. The VIPs, they got worth for their money. I don't really see that Verstringen had many more options, because he wasn't really on the wheel yet. He was still a second and a half behind. He needed something special, something audacious. Getting on that wheel in the final corner wouldn't have done it. Start-finish straight here is so short. Nice is a dangerous rider to sprint against, even in that state. He had one opportunity, he took it. Maybe he was a little bit too nice. I think Klaas van Toornhout or Rob Peters, they would have put that bike out a little bit more, forced Nice to slam the brakes, and that's maybe the only thing. But even then, that was my initial thought in the replay. It was very much a dive bomb off the bike on the wrong side to really be a dickhead there and make that big move for him. It would have been so difficult at that point to really force a winning move. He tried it, but it just wasn't to be after the race situation as it unfolded.
He was just too far. I guess if he was just a tiny bit closer, you could pull that off. But I think that he probably saw Nice came out that corner horribly and lost some speed. And I think that he saw that he was gaining, and he thought, okay, maybe I have to use this momentum now. Try to sneak there down the inside and see what happens. And he tried, and I think that was, you have to think of that. That was an instinctive move, and I loved it. I was really that last part of the lap, in a sense, it was really eventful. It was really nice to watch, and I think that Verstringen there. I was after the race. I was thinking about what if he stayed on the bike. because Nice really came out of that corner poorly. But it was at that point it was quite, you're not that far off from the finish line, and you normally are not going to pass Nice. Nice has to make a mistake somewhere, and he didn't, and that's kind of unimaginable there in that that latest phase there of the race on the course. It just barely happens that you make a mistake there. So I think that Verstringen did what he could. He got that opportunity. He fought for that opportunity. He deserved that opportunity in the sense, if you looked at how he raced and how he was able to believe in it, despite the fact that it wasn't, at certain points it was like 10 seconds, then he edges again a little closer. I definitely thought when they had like that second uphill before they go into that downhill again, I thought that was going to be, Nice came out there, I guess, a little stronger. Verstringen maybe had to kind of, pay a little price for that chase that he had been putting off, and that was a crazy chase in my opinion as well. But it was a great race, and I have to say that the course with the circumstances definitely gave the stronger riders a huge benefit, so it wasn't really a race in which certain riders that maybe are not the better rider but could make something out of it if the circumstances are right. They couldn't really play a role. It was quite, it was natural selection what happened there in that race, mainly because of Nice as well with the pace that he put on. With all the climbing and the technical sections as well, it just made it a very honest race. And there was Nice and there was Verstringen. I think if you look at the season, you have to be honest, Nice is the one that deserves it also a little bit more than Verstringen. Verstringen has had an awesome season, and would have been even crazier if he was going to be able to pull it off and become national champion. But we have to be honest, Nice was the better man this season. That doesn't mean that you will become national champion. You still have to pull it off, and he did. So you have to, you have to just admire that, and he did what he had to do, and he wasn't going to be happy with anything other than that national title, and he pulled it off. And you could arguably say that he maybe, I don't know if you can say he saved this season, but he definitely made this season a very, very, very solid season now with that title as well. Because if he didn't, you would almost not look at his results, and you would look at the title and say, yeah, he missed out on the title. So I think that he can look back on a very good race, a very strong race. The mistake made it a bit more, gave it more suspense, the race, but overall he definitely deserved it, was a strong rider, and Verstringen can look back on a very, strong race and be happy and focus on the road, because that was the last race for him this season.
It's the virtue of being such a champion. You're measured by the championships, and then if you don't become European champion like Nice, it comes down to becoming at least national champion, or then maybe pulling an offset at the World Championships. That's the narrative that you'll get around him. I agree, the course was good. I'm happy we didn't get that many punctures. It's really, really risky here to race this time of year in Beringen, but I'm glad it all went well. It gave us some real good moments. I mean, the run-up before the second climb, that was tough. Like in the last lap, you saw Nice slipping and sliding. He was just completely empty. He could barely get himself going again. It was a really, really hard day out, and you saw that. Technically, there were some interesting things. The off-camber, like Verstringen riding the higher line a number of times, Nice going in the low line. Do you clip in or do you unclip? Some interesting features there throughout the race to observe. Great side panel, and just the tactic of Nice. I think setting that pace early on was good. I said that before, but in the under 23 race, you kind of saw what happens if you don't really do that. The Powell Sauce Club Championship, 7 or 8 of their riders in the top 10 at some point. But at the front of the race, there were 5 Powell Sauce guys and 2 Baloise guys. Antoine Jamin was there. But the Powell Sauce guys didn't have it easy. There was nobody really willing to set the pace. Jordi Corsus had a bit of a problem with his calf, allegedly, in the middle of the race. De Bruikere, Sil de Brouwer, everybody had something going on. Nobody really wanting to set the pace. And as a result, they were really pushed to the limit by Mats van den Einde. First Arthur van der Boer, then he crashed. Mats van den Einde took over. it was difficult for Paul Sousa. Met the panning and sweating. I would have wanted to be a fly on the wall in that team meeting if Paul Sousa didn't take the win there, but they did in the end. But just that's the type of shithousery you can get into on this type of course with that big lower section if you don't have the ability to control the race like Nice did. Then you saw an interesting thing. Nice really prone to and really keen to stay on the bike, I should say. Looking early on in the race in those first corners of the course, staying on the bike, cutting those wide lines. The others, for Stringa especially, one of the riders, he gets off the bike. It's something that's hard mentally because you're so focused on staying on the bike. But on the flat, he got off, he ran, and he made that move in the end as well, running versus riding. He didn't get it. I don't think Verstringen has anything to blame in this race. The only thing he's to blame for, and that's mainly his team, is poor seasonal planning. It's a disgrace that he doesn't race the World Championships. They say, but he started his season in October. He didn't have that much time to do endurance-based building. He needs to be good on the road. Then start your season later, because what does Emil Verstringen get from this? It's a nice campaign. It's a good season. We'll remember this, and we'll say, you remember Emil Verstringen campaign? Highly underrated season in 25-26. But he doesn't really have anything to show for. Okay, a silver medal here is cool. Even a title is cool. But this guy has the opportunity to fight for a World Championship podium. It's almost like they forgot this guy was good in the Tour de France and that he was a good road rider, and halfway through the season realized, hey, we don't have that much incoming money, we don't have that easy sponsor situation, Premier Tech, last minute arrangements for Stringa, he'll need to move some needles for us on the road, you'll need to make some sandwiches for the rest of the team, he'll need to get some bidons here, he'll need to be a leader there. He can't really do this. We need him to build his base. Well, we don't have a leader for Strade Bianchi. Let's send Emil Verstringen. Like, this could have been prevented. He could have done a campaign like his teammates, Del Grosso, like his teammate Mathieu van der Poel. But he didn't, and that's, I think, a big neglect on the side of the team. And I get it. I get that there's road ambitions, and that's totally fine. I just think that if you're doing that, there's absolutely no reason at all to be starting your cyclocross campaign in Ruddervoorde after racing the Tour de France 2 months before. You can easily decide to start your season in November or in December, then race until the World Championships and really compete for a medal there, because he has that potential, and I think it's a shame he doesn't get that opportunity. It's my opinion, Issam. It's my opinion.
No, I totally agree, because I think, look, when that rumor kind of came out, and it wasn't really a rumor, it was probably already confirmed, but they just didn't confirm it in public. I was like, okay, but why did you do this season the way you did it? And then you're just gonna... I can understand it, because they might think that there is not really the biggest chance for him getting a podium in Hulst. Because, if you look at the course with Beringen, that is a course that really suits him. He gets there a lot of... he can play his cards there quite well with the climbing. That suits him well. He's the man that he's in great form currently, so I can understand it. I can understand it that they might make that decision. I think definitely what is weird about it is that you start your season so early, and now you act like you have crazy priorities in the spring, with the spring classics, and it's like, where were those priorities when you started your season in October? And I hope it's not gonna backfire, because it could. He still did quite a lot of races for someone that wants to do at least the spring classics or some, and what is gonna be next, we don't really know. We don't know the program, and I find it weird, to be honest, that there were not that many questions about it. Why he started his season? He gave his reasons to the media, in the sense from guys, I started my season quite early, so I have to do this if I want to be reasonable on the road. And it's like, sure, that's an okay answer, but why did you start that season so early anyways? Is it because of you? Is it because of the team? Did you change your planning somewhere in December? I mean, everything would have been reasonable if we knew the reason. Now we are somewhat in the guessing game of, is it Alpecin that just somewhere in the end of December was like, oh, maybe we can actually use Verstringen for it could very well be the case, but we don't really know. And I find it just weird that there were not that many questions about that, because I think that would have been a good question. I've heard some of the questions in also the Dutch championships. We will go over that, but it's some poor questioning. I mean, I had the pleasure of doing it once or twice, asking riders, and it is difficult. But some of the questions that have been asked is just ridiculous. So, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I'm happy that we saw Verstringen from October, to be honest, because we saw his potential and he showed that he's quite versatile, that he became more versatile, and that he is a rider of great level. I'm a little concerned that we might end up indeed with a Verstringen that is going to do a program that's going to be more similar to El Del Grosso and Van der Poel, and that's going to be, a bit shorter, and that's okay if if he has ambitions on the road as well. But maybe it comes from himself as well, because you can feel that he's also somewhat a cyclocross rider. He has that. He feels that he is that, and he has the ambitions on the road, but it almost feels like he looks at cyclocross as his number one thing, and road cycling as it's a side quest that he happens to be good at. And maybe that mentality is going to change. We have to wait and see. Maybe he's going to have an amazing season on the road. Could very well be the case, and then we're going to lose him for good on cyclocross. That would be a huge shame, but it is definitely within the possibilities.
Look, if it comes from himself, which is what he said at the beginning, I love cyclocross, I really want to race, that's not really an excuse, because there should be an entourage, a team that thinks like, hey, Emil, it's fine that you want this, but what do you want on the road, and what do we want you to do on the road, and how do these things come together? Because then you're going to take a different narrative to your season and write a different story. So that much about Verstringen. I think poor season planning is to blame, and that's always something that can be prevented. Few remarks then. I already said something about Van Toerenhout, strong ride, kind of where we expected him. Same for Van de Putte and Wieseuren. Good ride by Lander Looks, the rider for the Unibet Rockets. He's been quite strong. The physical course helps him a bit. Gerben Kuipers, 7th place, looking a little bit more like the old Gerben Kuipers, little by little. It would be nice to see him finally have a clean season and really deliver on that potential, which has to be somewhere deep inside for him. Tonnage, not really a great day for him. He blew up a bit, and also not a good day for Jente Michels, mechanical and crash. He also crashed in Zonhoven and was sick at the beginning of the Christmas period, so definitely a time frame for him to forget. We will cross the border then to Heubergen, an iconic course, hosted European Championships, many Dutch national championships, and they were back this year, but on a different course. The famous sand dune, it was gone. It was no longer there. The other big hill there was one big hill and a lot of fast corners and sections on a grass field. It had one long hill kind of in the beginning, which went a bit up and down over some dirt, but nothing other really too major. And we'll dive into the women's action there. We had in the first lap Lucinda Brandt leading the charge very briefly, but then it were Alvarado and Pietersen who took over. It was mainly Pietersen who really wanted to be in first before the key section, the big dune. It was a really good feature because you needed to sprint onto it, dismount at the perfect timing, super steep, so it was really difficult to nail that timing without coming to a halt or even falling backwards. Pietersen wanted to be in the lead there, and as the camera panned away, Brandt made a mistake. She needed to put foot on the ground, might have crashed. From there on, Alvarado also overtook her. 2 Phoenix de Koning riders, or I should say Phoenix Premier Tech riders at the front right now. Then Pietersen crashed. Alvarado went on to take the title. Pietersen second. Brandt was in a group for third, dropped them after a bike change, and then seemed fine. But that was kind of the story of the race, Issam. No real suspense. Pietersen once again making a good impression, but one crash costing her. Alvarado continuing a good trend of form. Is the injury a blessing in disguise? Does it have a silver lining that she reaches this phase of the season in peak form? And what about Lucinda Brandt? She crashed in Zonhoven, said it took a toll on her body, went to Spain, then decided to come back here for the Nationals. Didn't have Sven Nys along her side, started on the wrong tire thread. Not the first time that has happened. Didn't have the right B wheels in the pit on her B bike, needed to get those from the camper van, and then the race was gone by that time. You could definitely see on that grass field she was slipping and sliding a lot, didn't really have the traction on the climbs either, needing to dismount. Those are kind of my main takeaways here. Issam Peterson lost it by a unnecessary crash. I mean, it would have been no guarantee in any way that she would have won. And Brandt, she could have been in the mix, but this is another part. If we mention the things you need: physical, technical, tactical, and mental. The tactical definitely wasn't there for Brandt today in terms of the tire choices.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't there, and it was visible. It was. That's not how you want to, trying to your attempt to defend your national title. And
It wasn't the defense, eh? It was Peterson defending.
oh, sorry, Peterson defending, Brandt trying to, yeah, but it wasn't good. It didn't look good. It wasn't good, and you kind of just end up in a sort of a. There was some panic. They're trying to find the right tires, and it was just at some point it looks, I wouldn't say amateuristic, but it looks like you were not. It was not it, and then at some point you just see Alvarado and Peters gain more and more ground on Brandt, and then you just kind of understand that it was not going to be it. And in a championship, you have to understand that there are always going to be certain riders that will look at it and be like, I don't care about the week before or the Christmas period all too much. And definitely Alvarado is someone that probably was looking at that at the championship and be like, I like the jersey, I like the race, I want to win it, I need it because that will make my season a little bit better. And I don't know, I think it was Albert when it was 2011, 2012, which must have been the World Championship Kokzijde. And I think he was injured, or there was something going on, and they were looking into his season if that was gonna be, it was jeopardized in a sense. But then it is somewhat a blessing in disguise. It has happened before where things that happen outside of things that you can control, or injuries or illnesses or whatever, and that's just bad things that occur, and it can happen, and it can really influence your season. But it can also kind of reduce the pressure in a sense, and you can work towards a goal with a clear mind and a clear vision, and you don't really have to care all that much about all the classifications and all the races and all that. And Brandt had to do that. Brandt was dominating. I think that Brandt still, in terms of power, output and all that, is the better woman. But she has to be on her A game come the World Championships. She cannot come there and have these, mishaps, tire threads that were not good and all that. Because if you're gonna do that, you will end up coming to that World Championship, and you will be surprised, or you will definitely have Alvarado or Petersen or together, and then they will do the same thing that they did on the Nationals Championships. And I think that is for Brandt is. I think this is a good loss in a sense, because this is a wake-up call if she needed it, but in a sense it kind of is. And you can look into how she, what training she did, because she went to Spain and came back for 2 days and then went to Spain again. You can look into if that has an influence, what did she do that week? Did she train very hard? That could have also had that can take off the best performance in a sense, and then you will not really have the feeling, because Brandt was talking about not feeling all too great, and she said that she didn't feel great actually from the beginning of the week. So there are just factors that will play a role, and when you are that far behind in a sense, and you kind of feel that you're losing the race, then it kind of slips away. And when you kind of know that you're gonna finish third, there's not really much sense in continuing on pushing, and then you will gradually just lose more and more ground. So I don't think that we should look at this race and draw conclusions in the sense that Brandt is the setback, and Brandt is now no longer the best woman at the moment. I think that she still is. I just think that this is a good wake-up call, and she has to realize that World Championships is not going to be a walk in the park. She has to really fight for it. She has to be on her A game, and she cannot have these things happening to her.
So I think those factors, those circumstantial factors you mentioned, Brandt never really a rider that does best in the cold. Brandt crashed in Zonhoven, which took a toll. The travel to Spain, which then comes back a day before. Like, all those things. Like, that's probably more so the case than what you mentioned earlier. I don't think that Brandt is really fatigued from this season. Last year at this point, she definitely was. That's why she skipped the national championships. That's why she really spent that time training in Spain, recovering, because only later in the season did she start believing in a world title. This year already, from the start of the season, she raced fewer races, fewer double weekends, fewer Christmas races, not targeting all classifications, wanting to skip in the World Cup to remain fresher with the eyes on that title. However, we also must conclude that Brandt has been the standout rider of this season, but from the 4 races she didn't win this season, she lost 2 of them at championships, the European Championships and the National Championships. That is the cruelty of the championships. You don't really get anything other than money and, in the World Cup, a jersey for being the strongest rider over the season. However, for me, the biggest thing here is the support environment, the performance environment. For Lucinda Brandt here at the National Championships, she's kind of on her own. Sven Nys, Belgian Championships. Erik Braas, I didn't see him or hear him anywhere at the Dutch Championships. I don't know where he was, but those are the main coaches for the Belgian team. Paul van de Bos, the trainer. I don't think he trains Lucinda Brandt anymore, but he was also at the Belgian Championships, or at least in Belgium. I don't really know who was there for Baloise in the Netherlands. I don't know if Karen Ramakers was there, but she is, with all the respect, because she does a tremendous job, but she is not a performance coach. She can provide some guidance, but not of the level of anybody that would be there for any of the riders racing in Belgium. So I almost question, did they really give Brandt the performance environment she needed to succeed? Because ultimately riders decide their tire choice. But I just can't help but think that if Sven Nys had been there, then she wouldn't have started on the wrong tires, let alone that the right stuff wouldn't have been in the pits for her. And it's easier to happen here because at the national championships you don't have the whole team, you don't have the extra helpers come in, you're kind of more on your own, you can't bring all the stuff necessarily. Maybe you don't even have 3 bikes there, maybe you're just 2 bikes. Then you don't have all the stuff that you normally have. But just looking at the difference in the armada of big team stuff in Belgium versus the, I would say, just amateur setup of the Dutch nationals, like a crappy stream, no timer, no lap counter.
We should be ashamed of ourselves.
Quality. I've watched many national championships this weekend, and many of them had a better stream production than the Netherlands. That just adds to the vibe around it. But also in that, just the performance environment around Brandt, I just question it and question if Baloise really provided her. If I see on the Belgian TV, I freaking get a last lap cam on Sven Nys of him losing his mind in the Sporza studio. I mean, I get that he's there. Somebody needs to be there for those riders, but with just the amount of tools that they have in their toolbox, surely there could have been somebody as well at the Dutch venue. And maybe there was somebody there who I've totally seen over the head, but I didn't see it so far.
I don't know if that was really the case. There was definitely some entourage, but it wasn't heavy in a sense. And I agree. I think that definitely, in terms of, it could have maybe influenced certain things, certain choices, and it would have maybe worked out a little bit better. It kind of shows, I think, that half-assing it is disrespectful and is not really, it's not giving it justice, because I don't think that she did that in the race. But it's just, if you are if you're somewhat cutting corners and there are just certain things that that are not there in a sense, and then you kind of get this. And I think this is the first year that I kind of see them approach the nationals this way, because I can remember even there was, I don't know, I think that was actually the national championship that Brandt won. Nice choose the Netherlands over Belgium, so they have done it in the past. So that can also maybe you can look into that and make a story out of it and think like maybe the ambitions weren't there in the first place. Maybe there weren't that high expectations because of whatever reason, and they just wanted to be there and you want to ride a championship in a sense, and you never know what can happen there. But yeah, there were just a lot of things that went wrong. And again, I don't think that those things will go wrong to this extent at the World Championships, but I think it's a good wake up call that you should not take it for granted that, oh yeah, this season so far I've been the best. I'm so good. I can, if we have seen it this season, that even if she made a mistake, if she had a poor start, she was able to recover it quite well and was able to to make it all good and win the race. But now now it's gonna be a bit
that
different.
much is certainly true. Yeah, because now Alvarado is really good. Pieterse is good. I mean, again, for Pieterse, I'm just waiting for that flawless race, but it might never happen. It just might never happen, because this, again, like, really good day, but just that mistake there. I mean, if she nails it, she can easily defend her title against Alvarado. She could also still lose to Alvarado, for that matter, but it's just, again, a race that we've seen a number of times from Pieterse, but she and Alvarado are definitely approaching their top form, and I guess we got a comment last week, which is something that I've heard a number of times, like, when we discuss these riders, for us it's easy. We talk week in, week out, we talk about these storylines and we elaborate on them, and maybe then it's not that clear, but what we talk about is we know that Brandt is reaching a certain level this year, and we know that Pieterse and Alvarado have the possibility to reach that level. And we know that Alvarado and Pieterse are both technically more skilled than Brandt, even though Brandt has made progression. But what is also still very much the case is that Pieterse, due to her seasonal build, and Alvarado, due to an injury early on, aren't yet at their best physical form. We know that they are better. I still think that if you take the Alvarado from November last year, that she would beat the Alvarado of January right now. Alvarado was really good then, and we know she has that in her, and that's also why we've constantly been talking about this narrative. Hey, where does Lucinda Brandt rank up, and do we think that anybody who has the potential of reaching her level will also do so? And I think what we're seeing now is that Alvarado and Pieterse are coming ever closer to that level, and we will see in Benidorm, for instance, if Alvarado can do it again. Or will Brandt take the win then? Pieterse isn't starting there. Or on that fast course, will somebody else pull a rabbit out of the hat and be a contender and be the winner there? It's possible. I mean, last year in Maasmechelen, we had Vash pull one out of the hat. We didn't see that one coming, really. So it's exciting times, and there's definitely a storyline building here, which is what we've been waiting for all season, Issam.
Oh, please. We really have been waiting for it. But again, I don't want to draw conclusions or really go and be very excited, because I still somewhat believe that Brandt has the edge over them. I still think that is... I don't think that just changed overnight. But we knew that if Alvarado was able to come back at a very, very good level, and we kind of know that she is able to reach that level if everything goes well, that level would be enough to challenge Brandt. We knew that. It's not a surprise, but it was, for me at least, we didn't really see that level where we could say, okay, there it is, it's back again. Now the story continues in a sense. It was always there or thereabouts, but you could never and you could always say, but Brandt, mistake here, mistake there, la la la. And now, with the championship being won, you can definitely now say with more, I guess you have more backing to say that Alvarado and also Pieterse are now going to be serious contenders for the World Championship without it looking silly. There is now proof, in a sense. We can... you can use this race in a sense as a look. It is possible. It is possible for those for both Pieterse and Alvarado to bring a challenge to Brandt, and despite the fact that Brandt had everything going wrong in a sense, it is possible, and we have to see if that challenge is going to be if that's going to be happening again. Maybe the challenge comes from someone else. Who knows? But I have a feeling still that Brandt has the edge, and Brandt has still somewhat the cards in her hand. She still is the one that can make it or break it in a sense. She can still... She should just make sure that she doesn't make that many mistakes, and then I think it is definitely possible for her to to win the coming races and also the world title. But it is going to be more of a challenge than it was looking like, let's say, 2 weeks ago.
The proof is in the pudding, so to speak, and we will see what it brings in the next upcoming weeks. I think for the rest from this top 10, strong ride by Manon Bakker, 4th place. She's having a good Christmas period. Bentveld, okay. Worst continues the season as it's been going along, not that great. Van Alphen, tiredness definitely factoring in for her now. I would have honestly expected her potentially to skip this weekend, but she still raced. And then on the men's side, a bit of a weird race, to be honest. Del Grosso, good start, then broke clear, got caught by Pim Ronhaar. They were together at almost the exact same moment as Nice. Ronhaar went down, or it was Del Grosso who went down. And he managed to come back to Ronhaar. He dropped Ronhaar, and then kind of out of nowhere, because the camera work was atrocious, there was no timer, not anything, I've said it before. Lars van der Haar came from the background, overtook Ronhaar, and managed to keep that gap on Del Grosso at 5 seconds, but he never really was able to make a threat. The course also wasn't of the nature to really get pressure on or force a mistake. It was relatively easy. Del Grosso had 2 moments. He had the crash, and he also had a moment on the barriers when he remounted and his chain kind of got undone. He moved it on back while riding. Despite that, it seemed like he was in control. He definitely didn't have too much left in the tank, I think, in the final lap, but he got it done. Kind of what you would have expected. I don't really have all too much to say on his ride. I did notice one lap on this steep hill, he rode up so fast that when he remounted, he literally fell back a few steps, and then Ronhaar could close in a bit more. It went back and forth a little bit, but despite some setbacks, Del Grosso still won the title.
Yeah, and I think he did what he had to do in a sense. I mean, he was heading to this nationals as the favorite. I wanted to say as a favorite, but to be honest, he was the favorite. Had everything kind of going for him, and there's always gonna be someone that wants to seize that particular race as an opportunity, and Ronhaar was definitely that challenge. He gave it a good go. And then there was Van der Haar, and he got some support from Ronhaar. It wasn't all too long, but it helped in a sense a little bit. And Van der Haar had like this race that he had a couple of, or this race, but he had such a race a couple of years ago in which he was no longer that fast starting Van der Haar, but he was then that Van der Haar that was getting better and better throughout the race, and then we saw him maybe 30-35 seconds back, and then he was all of a sudden he was there at the front of the race, and it was gonna be a serious threat for the last lap. And he kind of had that. He grew into the race and made it Del Grosso very difficult in a sense, because Del Grosso was not allowed to make a mistake and had to, he was pushing, but I think that he was pushing with a little bit left, and he knew what he was doing, and he didn't make a mistake, because that would have been maybe costly, but now it wasn't, and he was just able to get to the finish line and take the title. And you can say he did what he had to do. He is at an age that at times you cannot really say that about a rider, but here we are anyway saying it. And I think the natural order kind of was shown there again. It was definitely Del Grosso was the better man at this time of the season. Van der Haar had his ups and downs. Ronhaar, has also been struggling a little bit, but finally had a better race, I guess. There's definitely a race where you can take more positives from. That was kind of it. That it was atrocious broadcasting, and I have to say I was, looking there and then definitely looking back at the Belgian broadcast as well, because the racing was also a little bit more interesting and the broadcasting was very good. But anyways, it was I think it was a regular championship, and Del Grosso did what he had to do and pulled it off.
My favorite thing about the championships, and that's just any championship, might just be on the Belgian TV, but I also saw a bit on the French TV, just these camera crews. I also saw in the Czech Republic, by the way, but they're just next to the coaches. Like, imagine in football you're next to Pep Guardiola in the box with a microphone, and just Pep, what do you think of your play? It's atrocious. It's a bad job. Or come on, run down the wing. Like, that's the level of closeness that you get in cyclocross. Like, you watch the Belgian TV and you see Sven Nys shouting, "Come on, your gap is expanding," and then you go to Wouters of Krelan, "Come on, you're closing in on him." And one of the two is obviously lying, but they're still standing right next to each other, shouting to the riders, and you're getting a glance in the box of the coaches. It's just so fantastic, and that was just so great to see also at the French Championships, and sadly not at the Dutch Championships, but those are the main points. I agree with you, Issam. I had the point for me, I mean, Nieuwenhuis, definitely with that knee injury, has been up and down, some good races, some bad, but I fear we won't really see the best Nieuwenhuis anymore, which is a shame, because that too would have been a strong podium contender at the World Championships. Of course, a little bit depending on the conditions, but he's been very good, had very strong phases this season, and still by all means is not doing bad. Ronhaar then, I mean, he was good until his back completely popped. It was quite interesting to see, like, Del Grosso and Ronhaar, two back patients who are both probably running at the same PT at the front, both stretching their back coming off the bridge. Del Grosso crashed the corner before the bridge. That was not really a place that it seemed easy to crash, but a mistake is often made easily. So both of them kind of stretching their back a bit, and it was reminded me just a little bit of something I saw on Friday on my Instagram. The Texans are 0-6 in the NFL playoffs on the road, and the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in 9 years, and some pundit called it a movable object placed against a beatable force. Kind of just seeing them stretch their back like that made me think back of that, even though Del Grosso is very much an immovable object because he's really, really good, and despite some small problems with his back, he's going to be a contender for the podium, perhaps together with Nys, the challenger for Mathieu van der Poel come the World Championships. Ronhaar, I'm a bit worried because this is the second season in a row those back injuries are really, really hurting him. Both years he has these phases in which he gets it together and can show it, but it's just troublesome, and you just hope that he can get it together for one season and showcase his full level, because the talent is there. And yeah, I mean, the under 23 titles here, Haverding's good ride for fourth. Bentveld won it in the women's category. Junior titles going to Gooyert and Versluis. Versluis going to be a contender for the podium in the women's junior category. I don't think we'll see Grossman, so that leaves a quite interesting battle for third place there, and we will go into that more in the preview episode in a few weeks. And now we will actually move to France, to Troyes, where that is just a phenomenal course. I really, really love that course. It has all the natural elevation, big off-camber, another smaller off-camber, these up-downs, the technical elements to it, some corners with minor elevation that become running. Just really, really good racing altogether. And in the women's race, we were not really treated to a battle, but also not to a snooze fest. We had Célia Géry taking a good start. She then fell on the stairs. Foucounet took over. Géry managed to come back. Why? Foucounet was more technical, or more powerful, I mean. Géry was the one who was more technical. You could just see the difference in lines. Foucounet, tight inside line. Géry coming out all the way wide, cutting across, much higher speed. The most interesting section was perhaps this weird little right kink, not really a bend, just a little twitch, and then up a false flat, maybe a little bit more than false flat, but it was completely shredded apart under a tree, and the line you took in really determined how much speed you had, and the number of times Géry just flew through there with much more speed, Foucounet kind of boggling there. Eventually the decision was made when Foucounet crashed on the stairs. She slipped, broke her boa, and then she needed to chase. She cut her way through the chasing pack back into second. Gap went down to 15 seconds, put the pressure on Géry, but Géry managed to stay calm, had something left in the tank to respond. In the final lap, Foucounet eased off, Géry taking the win ahead of Foucounet. Third place going to Amandine Muller after a good battle with Laurine Durafou. It was a nice little watch. I love that course, and Géry taking the title in the end. Is it a big upset? I wouldn't say so.
Nah.
You would? I wouldn't say so on this course, on these conditions, and also, this is Célia Géry, Issam. If you don't factor her in for a championship, I am sorry. First year under 23, European cyclocross champion, World road champion. Tour de l'Avenir, the big stage. 3 stage wins in a row. Moi, pas de problème pour moi. This is Célia Giry. If you don't factor her in for the championships, it's your own fault. I'm sorry. It is an upset, yes. But for me, not a big upset. You know that she had it to really mount a challenge, especially in these course conditions.
A big or a huge upset, I wouldn't call it that. I think it's nevertheless, I think you can call it somewhat an upset, because I think
I agree there.
I think we were all heading into this championship looking at France, looking at the women category and saying, normally that is Fouquenes to take. And sure, obviously there is this sort of it is a championship. It was, the conditions were there. The course was there in a sense for that Géry maybe had a chance to do what she has done now a couple of times already. But I think that it was, that you could see that in the race she definitely was this was a race where she wanted to be good. They definitely eyed this race as a race where, they were thinking about that upset. They wanted to realize that upset. And it is a shame for Fouquenet in the sense that she, arguably has her best season, achieved so much on the elite level, things that we didn't think that were possible in a sense almost. Out of contract, gets that contract. Maybe she somewhat, it's hard to judge, but, how has the preparation been for her in terms of how did she prepare for this championship? Was she even able to really prepare for it and peak for this championship? Or was it more of just another race in the season? Those are things, and maybe for Géry, this wasn't just a race of a season. It was a championship where she wanted to be good. And that is also what you kind of see at these championships, that, sometimes approaches differ due to circumstances, sometimes just because of the focus, perhaps could have played a role. But I think that you can also just conclude that Géry is a rider that, I really hope will still do a lot, stay and do plenty of cyclocross in the next coming years. It's almost unimaginable. I think that we will lose her. It would be so great to see her continue on. Hopefully we can see the jersey as well the rest of the season, but also next season for sure. That would be great to see. And she's just an incredible talent, so I really hope that she sticks around a little bit and gives those Dutch women a good hard battle and fight for those races for victory, because I think that she's definitely capable of doing so. She's definitely talented. She's not just a roadie. So yeah, I think that is, it's just a huge talent, and every time she, I guess maybe in a way a little bit surprises us and also shows that she is that talent. And it's incredible to see that someone like that is just getting better and better, and that progress is almost unimaginable. It's definitely something that you don't see that often, and that makes it just the more special.
Géry is an unreal talent, a generational talent. I do think she will stick around, and here's my long-term prediction. In 2030, Célia Giry will finish on the podium of the Olympic Games in the south of France. That's my prediction here. We will see if we're still around in 4 years from now to see the days of that. But I think she will be able to do it then. She's really talented, and Fouquenet, did she really peak for this race? I'm not fully sure. There were a number of factors coming into play here. The broken boa, she could have won without that probably. But other than that, the technical really hurt her. She's improved technically a lot, but there was still plenty of improvements to be made here. I mean, part of it could also be that she's now very, very new on that Ridley bike, and those mid-season swaps are not easy technically. The bike handle's different, but in just some of the corners, the tight line she were taking, it wasn't working. She didn't really have the vision to adapt to the line Géry was taking. Around the athletics track, there was this up camber with a chute. Géry managing to stay in the pedals almost all the way till the end. Foucounet comes up the chute into the rut, immediately unclips. That was 2-3 seconds every lap just on that section. The big off camber next to the football field, another few seconds every lap as well. So the technical on that course, you really need to have it on point. We know it's a weakness of Foucounet, and we could see that Géry definitely nails that in a similar way like we already saw that in the downhills of the Koppenberg, and we've seen it many, many times before. It's really a good mix. I mean, that was my takeaway from the Junior Women World Championships in Tabor back then when she won. Ferguson, the most gifted rider, powerful wise there. At that point, Gladonova probably the most gifted rider technically, but Géry the best of both worlds, and that's also still how I look at her racing there. And yes, I do agree it's an upset that she beats Foucounet, but to me it's not the biggest upset. I've seen bigger upsets this weekend in other categories, and I mean, maybe one of them is on the men's side there in France, because that to me is probably the upset of the weekend, because I was watching that race. You were watching the Dutch race and the Belgian. I was also watching the Dutch, but it was in a picture-in-picture in the French stream. And Leo Bisio was the favorite for me when the race started, but I knew in the course conditions it would be difficult. But I thought he would still have it. But he did not have any technical feeling on the bike whatsoever. It's what I feared for seeing him race this season. He was a better cyclocross rider as a second-year junior than he is right now. He's transformed into a roadie. He doesn't have the finesse, and it showed. Crash on the stairs, slide out here, off the bike there. And instead, Joris Delbove, I mean, I was listening to the Belgian, so I didn't really know who it was. At first, I thought, okay, it's Fabien Doubet. He's taken off. He's the old guy, the Total. But no, it was Joris Delbove. Let me read you some of his results. This was his third race of the season. He is from Troyes. He finished 18th in Berthune, 5th in Pétange. Last year he did 4 cyclocross races. 8th and 7th in Nome, 17th and 19th in Troyes. Year before, no top 10s. Year before that, his first year as an elite, 4th in Troyes. I guess he really loves this course. But this guy, okay, as an under 23, he's on the podium 3 times at the French Championship, but comes out of the blue, pulls a rabbit out of the hat. He wins, and not just does he win, he dominates. From start to finish, he powers away, 20-second gap, no problem. He seems to be in control, just burning the matches, putting out the power, big group behind. What does it matter? Joris Delbove, French champion. For me, that is the upset of the weekend.
Yeah, for me as well. It was almost a who, but hey, look, that is kind of what I was talking about. That there are just certain riders. That was his big goal. He was talking about post race that he was saying this was my big goal. This is maybe even big goal of the year. He wanted to do this so badly. Is in your own city. You want to just. He wanted to do it in front of his home crowd, and the starting field. We obviously miss Venturini who wasn't here, and I think that obviously also somewhat plays a role and gives a chance to these type of riders. But then you still have to pull it off, and as you said, he was. When he got in there, I didn't watch the full race. I watched the highlights a little bit, and I went through that race, and he was in control. He was just in control, and hats off, because it's one thing to have an objective, but it's a whole other thing to also accomplish it and make it happen and realize it, and he did that, and it's we're not gonna see that jersey, I think, that often at the front of the race or somewhere in the top 20 this season or the next. But you have to just appreciate that performance overall, and to be able to pull it off, as I said, that is just, I guess, quite remarkable, incredible, and yeah, it is what it is, and as I said, it's just, I think that there's just a whole, like, a small disadvantage about this win. That is the main thing, is that we're not gonna see that jersey that often at the first 20 in the bigger races, and that is maybe a shame. But but he deserved it and he worked for it, and congratulations. That's all I can say, really.
Then let's move to Italy. Great racing in Bulgaria. It may not surprise you at this point. I mean, if you've been listening to us for over an hour, I watched a lot of Italian racing this weekend. I watched the men junior race in the morning. It was a phenomenal battle between Filippo Grigolini and Mattia Agostinacchio. And what a course there in Bulgaria. I mean, off cameras, a big wall, barely rideable, but it was rideable. It was fast, but it had character, the course. It had real character. Petzorosla sprinting away for the win. Woman junior, heartbreak. Giorgia Pellizzotti crashed early on, needed to run to the pits. Then needed to settle for a lower finishing. It was Nicola Zetti winning. Men under 23. Nice battle there for the win as well. Stefano Viezzi getting it in the end. It was kind of sad to see most of the big Italian kind of rivals for Filippo Fontana lining up in that race, but Agostinacchio couldn't deliver there, seemed to struggle a bit with the course, didn't seem to have his best day. Then came the elite races, and there, the course was great, but it was job done. Casasola back from illness. For the first 2 laps, I was a little bit worried. I was thinking, is this heading the same way as last year? She tries to take off early, back from illness, doesn't really have it yet, fades. No. Garibaldi tried to keep the pressure on, but didn't have the physique. Casasola power to the victory. In the men's race, there was no stopping Filippo Fontana. Game over there for the opposition as well. Bertolini coming home for second there. Job done for both favorites, I would say. And, I mean, for Casasola, I think the question is a bit, how does she recover from that illness? How does this training camp go? Then, what are the expectations for Worlds? Certainly a top 10, I think, and that for Fontana, I think, should also be the goal, securing a top 10 there. He's had a really good season. He's been on the bubble, scrapped some under 23s from in front of him, and he's even a little bit closer every time, so definitely interesting. And, I mean, we just discussed the French. They will have several medal opportunities at the championships as well. So will the Italians. They will have contenders in every single category, but the woman under 23 should be able to field a strong relay team as well. Good times for Italy, good course, kind of reflects the vibes that I'm seeing around that national team at the moment.
It was definitely a beautiful course, actually. It was good to see. I watched some of the women's race and a little bit of the men's race. I watched the last 2 or 3 laps from the men juniors as well. But yeah, I think that is definitely the takeaways that you can get from it. I mean, it is always difficult when you're coming back from illness and you don't really know if it's still there or they're around or you fully recovered. And that's, I'm talking about now Casasola. I think that is just a difficult situation she's in, and you just have to hope that she's able to finish the season strongly. That is kind of what I hope as well, and I think that is, I wish that would be the case, because that would be a shame that I kind of try to remember how last year went, but that wasn't else. There was also some issues going into the later phases of that season. And then she was able to get back again, but it kind of just ruins the momentum in a sense, and you don't want to have that. It just takes also a lot of energy. So hopefully she's able to be in good form come the World Championships. And I totally agree with you. I think that the Italians, as a nation, they have definitely chances of getting a medals. I think on the men junior side for sure. A lot is possible overall. I think definitely with the relay team they can also pull something off. So yeah, they can look at the talent that they have, and that talent that will improve overall, and we have to see how the development eventually will be, because we know from the past as well that it's not a guarantee. If you have very good men junior, women junior, men under 23, it's not a guarantee that you will see that development go all the way through to the elites. But it's a good thing, when you see that the work that you put in and the effort that you put in junior categories, that it also pays off in a sense in medals in those categories alone, because it's not a given. There are countries that also put similar efforts in and are not able to produce those medals. So it is not a given. structure is very important. It's also important that you have the, it at times talent, it comes and goes. 2 years you have very good talent, and at years then you don't really have that. So it's that is also, you kind of have to look at that, and there are circumstances that play a role in that as well. So those are all factors. But I think that Italy is in a very good place, and that course was really good. Was a really good course. It kind of, the way it looked and all that, it kind of brought some memories from courses that I saw, on YouTube, that you look back how they were looking in the late 90s in a sense, and it was, well, it looked very good, and the racing was also not bad. I think the men junior race there with Pezzorosola and Grigolini was definitely a very good battle. I enjoyed it. It was basically Pezzorosola that just in the last lap absolutely put Grigolini under huge pressure, and Grigolini had to crack. But yeah, it was a faster race for sure, and then it was a good championship, good organized. Nice that they had a stream. Nice that the stream was also available, unlike other countries like Great Britain. But anyways, but yeah, I think it was good, and overall, I think especially the elite category with Fontana and Casasola, definitely the two better riders getting the title there.
Sounds to just see a random bloke with a phone-style camera on the course. Look, it's fine, right? Like pay-per-view. I mean, in Italy, it was on YouTube, but it was also on the Rai. I was surprised that the elite racing was also on YouTube. I thought that was going to be behind. You needed a VPN for some reason to watch the Czech championships. Yeah, it's whatever, but let's move to the British championships. I mean, it kind of pains me a little bit to discuss them, because not necessarily because of the pay-per-view. I don't really care about that. I mean, £3 is a reasonable price, although we could expect maybe a little better streaming quality then, but whatever. It's a reasonable price. I've seen far worse, but it would be nice to just put it on for free, especially for the youth races, whatever. Fine. The reason it pains me a bit is just to look at the state of US or UK cyclocross at this point, because on the women's side especially, it's super thin. I mean, how much talent have we seen in recent years? But how much of that talent has flown away? I mean, Evie Richards, mountain bike. We've seen Kat Ferguson, Imogen Wolf, both of them on the road now. It's just a little bit painful also to see the decline of Anna Kay. We've seen so much talent come through, but it hasn't really materialized. I mean, there's more riders, Millie Cousins, for instance, but for the UK on the women's side, it just doesn't really seem to materialize at the moment, and that's a bit sad. On the men's side, Cameron Mason takes the win. I don't really have much to say other than job done. Women's title went to Anna Flynn. But it's just a little bit frustrating to see, and it's not unique to the UK, don't get me wrong, but if you just look at like the generation, when Pidcock locked out the top step of the podium, full British podium in BLS, Turner, Tullett, Pidcock, there was just a lot of talent coming through, and now we didn't really see the results of that. What you would have expected, like looking back 10 years in time, Pidcock and Zolder, then BLS, like really this wave of British talent, and UK really consistently becoming the third cyclocross nation, strong on the men's and women's side. Sure, there is still the talent there, don't get me wrong. I mean, Zoe Backstedt didn't race there. There's still, it's not dead, it's not buried, don't get me wrong that way, but it was just a little bit frustrating to see, or maybe not frustrating, just disappointing. I think when this UK cyclocross boom happened a few years ago, my expectations for what the UK cyclocross would look like right now is different, but the same points which we just discussed about Chery, the road, the mountain bike, they have stronger pull factors. We discussed this at length in the US National Championships episode, and that much is true. Those have a bigger pull factor, and that's totally fine. But it's just a little bit sad to see, like, compared to what you know it could be. If you get what I mean, Issa.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. I mean, it's just, I would not have expected, if you look at the talents that were coming through, that the state would be this, you know. There, it seems just like there's not really, you know, there's something going on with the flow. It's just, there is talent coming through in a sense, but it just never materializes in something in the direction, obviously, of cyclocross, and it just fades onto road mountain bike or even into nothing. And that's a huge shame, to be honest, because I think that the British riders have a place in cyclocross at with the very best, in my opinion. And I think that if you look at the riders that are and the potential, I think there is something possible. I'm not really that well informed about the structure and how everything is going with the juniors and all that, so I cannot really give that much. I cannot criticize it all too much, and I have to stay in my lane in that regard. But I think that it is definitely that they potentially need to work on it, because there is room for improvement. The results are not great, and yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's maybe you can fill in, but is it maybe that cyclocross doesn't really have the biggest importance or the highest importance in terms of cycling overall in a cycling discipline in Great Britain? Is it maybe also a little that maybe a lot more attention goes to track, road, a mountain bike in a sense?
No, for sure. I think that's definitely the case. Like in many countries, the Olympic versus non-Olympic discipline. For one thing, I think if the only semi-critical note I can make for the federation is that they field very small teams for the Worlds and European Championships. Even if riders are willing to go by themselves, that's maybe something that could give a little bit more opportunity to other riders to develop. But the talent, I think it's there, but it's just not sticking. Like, you have the Amy brothers, but they are also being drawn onto the road. Jacob Steed and Milo Wills there on the men's side. I mean, this year also, like, Zoe Roach is having a quite solid season in the junior women's category. Peggy Knox, the first year, also up there with some solid results. I believe she won in Rutherford way back in the beginning of the season when I watched them race through the junior men's pack for absolutely no reason, because they could have had their own race, but that will be Belgium for you. So there's definitely talent, but it's just hard to keep them. And the federation, I think, does a relatively good job in supporting them, also in training them. There's also grassroots programs that really help them build their skills. So that much, I think, is there. But I just think, like you see in many countries, it's, I guess, not that different from the French, other than that the French still have, and the UK also still has that, for what it's worth. I mean, Baxet and Mason, that's two very good poster riders to have, and the French also have that, but maybe even less. Like, the Brits are still there, and they still have more than enough reason to be there and shouldn't, again, be buried. But I guess it's just the contrast. Like, you saw them kind of come as a semi-new cross-country. I mean, we'd been there before with the World Cup in Milton Keynes, which was a great success, and they'd had Ian Field, they'd had Helen Wyman. So I guess a new isn't the word, not a new cross-country, but a new generation of British riders, Nikki Harris. So they'd been there. But there was a new elan, and you thought, like, okay, now we're really moving with Pidcock, the big star, and then Pidcock now focused on the road. So I think that's just more the story there, which is, again, present in other countries as well. I mean, in Italy, we will see in a few years from now, where are all the Italians? Like, where's Pezzo Rosola? Where's Cincolani? Where's Dell'Olio? Pelizzotti? I mean, they're on the women's side. Corvi, Venturelli, they're on the road and mountain bike as well now. So we will see. And I don't mean to be overly critical. It's just a bit of a observation I had from just looking back in time a bit. I mean, everybody is saying the 2026 is the new 2016. Post the pictures from 2016. So for me, that was kind of just the thing to look at whatever happened back then and how I reflect this. But we're recording for nearly an hour and a half, so let's draw this to an end and just go over some other results. Spain. Business as usual. Felipe Orts, easy win by a minute. Fast course there in Tarancon. Women Elite, the streak of Lucia Gonzalez Blanco is over. It was already last year, actually. It was Sofia Rodriguez Rivera taking her second in a row. I thought this year maybe Gonzalez Blanco could pull one back, but I didn't want to say the streak was over. What I meant to say is I think her era is over. I think it's been passed to Sofia Rodriguez Rivera. Some prediction points from a long shot prediction of a few years ago, 2021 or 22, when we both said that on the podcast. Anyway, enough. Then, someone whose era certainly isn't over, Marcel Meissen in Germany, winner or runner-up of the Turbo Curls, coming out of retirement to win just another national title. No big deal for him. He beat, in a close finish actually, Fabian Eder, woman elite title going to Judith Kral. Switzerland, Kevin Kuhn beating Dario Lillo. Lillo, really good rider, but again, on the mountain bike. Like, if he had been going in cross, this too could be a rider that could have been developed into a potential top 10 finisher in World Cups. But he has different priorities. He's with Giant on the mountain bike, doing quite good there, so can't blame him once again. I mean, he was on Deschach, the team didn't keep him. The typical story, they sign the first year under 23, they have high expectations, it doesn't materialize in the first 2 years, then he needs to go into mandatory military service, and he comes back a very strong rider, but then he's out of the cyclocross loop, so that's that. Alessandra Keller beat Jolanda Neff and Rebecca Esterman on the women's side there. Then in Denmark, Danielle Wies Nielsen took the title with Anne Dorthy Lipski taking the women's title. Luxembourg, Mary Schreiber taking a free national title, one could say. That will definitely be a long-running stroke. 2 participants in Women Elite. Nina Breton second at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The Men Elite title went to Loïc Bettendorf, a rider who's been having a quite solid season in the middle of the World Cup pack, seen that jersey a number of times. Then, the Polish Championships, Filip Helta ending the streak of Marek Konwa, with Susanna Kristalla winning the Women Elite title, David Riesberg and Thea Persson winning the Swedish titles, Portuguese titles going to Rafael Sousa and Beatriz Guerra, Irish title going to Dean Harvey and Freya Whiteside, Dominique Hutzmuller and Natja Heigl winning the Austrian titles. Snowy conditions in the Bretsen for the Hungarian Championships. I watched that race. It was actually quite cool to see that course in the snow. Takac Zombor taking the title, as did Regina Brugner. No Kata Blanca Vash there to race. She will be back, I think, in Benidorm, which could be interesting. In Romania, it was Patrick Pescaru taking the title, as did Wendy Buena. Buena, another rider that did quite well in the junior women's category a few years ago. In Serbia, there are still no results on the UCI website. Unfortunately, I just reloaded them. Not there yet. And I can finally give you the Albanian results for men. Ulcian Velia took the title there. I already mentioned in the previous episode that Natalie Kabetai won the title there for the Women Elite. And with that, I believe you are up to date about National Championships weekend. Issam, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I don't know, my recording somewhere, no idea, but it cut and then I had to restart it again, so you will maybe see me somewhere with a black screen, probably, but I don't know. It's just gonna be for a few minutes, most likely, because I caught up on it quite quickly. But anyways, that doesn't really matter. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed. It's always interesting, I guess, championships. There is always something that you can watch, rewatch, or schedule to watch. So it's special. It's a bit of traditions. This always has been this way. It's a bit chaotic. You hear the results left and right. Some you have seen, some you haven't, and then you want to kind of know how it all involved. So yeah, I guess in a sense, definitely always a special weekend in a sense. So I enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We will be back later. I'm headed to Benidorm in 2 days from now, which should be a good little trip, a little bit of riding, many interviews on and off the record, hopefully, and then the racing should be good as always there. Thanks everyone for watching. See you guys soon. Goodbye.